So, hello everybody, welcome to Sliding Doors. I'm Susheel, and on the other screen is
Rohan.
Welcome to this episode. To everybody who's listening to us from around the world, from USA, Turkey, Australia, all over the place, welcome. And if you've not listened to us before...
We literally have listeners.
Yeah. So thank you for listening to us. And if you haven't subscribed as yet, please do that now. Today, we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, something that Rohan has taken to heart for many years, and that is minimalism. Let's get going, Rohan.
Yes, let's get going. Let me ask you, What is minimalism?
It means paring down the stuff that you have, getting down to the basics. That's what I hear most people talk about. Is that all it is?
That is a part of it, but there's actually way more to it than that. And I think the best way to get to that is to perhaps share my minimalism story. So give me like 5 minutes and I will condense it. So about 10 to 15 years ago, you in fact put me in touch with Leo Babauta's Zen Habits. Do you remember? And he was talking about decluttering. That's the term he used.
Okay.
And I remember there was a visceral reaction to the idea of having a clear desk. It just made me feel good. An empty desk, well organized.
Okay.
So this may be the OCD traits in me coming out, but I felt better. So I started with this decluttering, and then I got sort of obsessed with getting rid of stuff. And this came Marie Kondo's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, which has now become a cult classic.
Okay.
She is a Japanese lady who came up with, I think this is part of Japanese culture. She's just packaged it for the West. I'm not sure on that. But she's come up with this system to tidy up, as she called it. So I was now decluttering from Leo, tidying up from Marie Kondo. Then the minimalism had started coming into the lexicon around that time, became very popular. And
so this was around, 2005, 2006? No, later than that.
2000, yeah, later than that. 2008 in fact, Kondo was relatively recently. But just the concept as it sort of solidified in my head, these three, the Leo Babauta, Marie Kondo, and the minimalism blogs that I came across online. And like you said, I engaged with it as a way of getting rid of stuff. And it appealed to me, as I said, viscerally at an emotional level, as a sort of way of lightening my load. Now, this is all, I know it can sound quite woo-woo because I can't give you numbers and facts, but it just felt good to get rid of stuff. And so then I pursued that aggressively.
I kind of remember something. You were giving away books or something? Was that you or someone else?
Yes, me. Yeah. So Marie Kondo suggests, she takes you through how to get rid of possessions. Because the thing is, when you start getting rid of stuff, you realize that there's an emotional attachment to these things.
Yeah.
For example, if you're into fashion, your clothes, it's a big deal to get rid of some clothes.
Right.
So Marie takes you through a non-threatening process. So you start with books.
Okay.
Now, if you're a book lover, this may be a problem. But for most of us who like books, they're relatively easy to get rid of. And the idea, Marie talks about this concept of joy spark. So if you connect with the object, if it lightens a joy spark in you, keep it. If not, get rid of it.
Joy spark.
I couldn't relate.
That's a nice term.
Yes, joy spark. I couldn't relate to joy spark. I just looked at, have I used this in the last year or not?
Okay.
And then I realized that most of my books I had read just once.
Okay.
And so there was and I had no intention of coming back to them. So there's just a handful of books that I would read again. So then I got rid of all the books that I knew I would never read again. And then I worked my way to clothes, then furniture. I had this whole sofa set in my flat, and I never had people over. And I never sat on the whole set. I just had one armchair that I used.
Okay.
So like that, I started getting rid of stuff. In that process, though, I think everyone's journey will start with getting rid of things. And for example, my dream, because I had embraced this hardcore, was to condense my whole life, my possessions, into a backpack. One backpack living was my goal. So I was counting.
What was the purpose?
Can I have just felt good? You feel light, you feel mobile, you feel you're not tied down by things. It was this dream, this idea. But I think that many quote unquote minimalists do that. They overcompensate and try and get rid of everything. And that's when I realized. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So that's when I realized that there's something more to minimalism than just getting rid of stuff. And I can give you a concrete example. I went to a friend's house and he had this wall-to-wall shelf of books. And I was asking him, because I was exploring, I was asking him, how often do you read these books? No minimalism lecture, just gathering data.
Right.
And he was saying that he rereads many of them, but obviously not all of them.
Sure.
But what that bookshelf represents to him is the hub of a community. So a community of book lovers in his neighborhood would come by, borrow the books, chat with him, have a pleasant evening, take the books and go and return. So that's when I realized that it's not about getting rid of stuff. It's about getting rid of what's not important to make place for what's important.
Right.
So to tell this friend of mine, get rid of books, is ridiculous. You should have only 3 books. No, that's an artificial number. So talking to him, I realized the heart of minimalism isn't about getting rid of stuff. It's, like I said, making place for what matters.
Right. And I like this mood board or mind board that you have in the back. It says declutter, quiet, mindful.
Yes. You can see it. This is huge. It calms me down.
Okay.
And so why less to pay so that you can pay attention? A simple example would be just your belongings in your house. So say you have
so it's a way to focus
Yes.
your energy on the stuff that matters. Is that how you see it?
Exactly.
Okay.
And the energy part is that everything we have takes maintenance.
Yes.
It may not take much time to maintain. So that's why I went to objects, because that's the easiest way of understanding. So if you have, say, a laptop, a PC, a scanner cum printer, and then a washing machine, a dishwasher, like you can name all these appliances. All of them are useful in their own way. But every new appliance means servicing, breakdowns, see your printer refilling the ink. So it's not about what you should and shouldn't have. It's about how much energy and time do you have for the things that you've decided are important.
And money.
So if
and,
you're a high
scheduling
money,
stuff.
Yes.
I can see how it would all add up.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you get into it, it's not really you have to have just 5 items of clothing to be a minimalist. So I wouldn't call myself a minimalist. I'd call myself a fan of minimalism.
Okay.
So that's where I came into it. And so it was initially this journey of getting rid of stuff. It was an emotional thing. But now I've had time to settle into it. I see it as a much less rigid, you have to do this thing. Because the funniest thing is one guy who was a minimalist got married. And his wife joked, saying that minimalism is just another word for being a bachelor. So he had one spoon
there might be some truth
and one
to
fork.
that. Yeah.
Quite possible. I would say though that minimalism changes when you have a partner.
Absolutely.
So he had one spoon and one fork because he never had guests over, and that made sense. But she had guests over all the time, so that didn't make sense for her.
Right.
It's an artificial thing. So then they got a whole dinner set. And now he's sheepishly telling the camera, because he's recorded multiple videos talking about how few possessions he has. And now he has to sheepishly tell his fans, listen, I've now got a whole dinner set. So,
Well, you have to adapt.
yes. You're married. Have you had to do any of this adapting?
Not me. My wife has actually adapted more than I have. She's been nice
Really?
about it. Yeah, but no. I do have to make space. I have to make accommodation for her preferences. Otherwise, things aren't going to work out.
Right. In fact, and then we can segue into, so it's easy to understand minimalism when it comes to things.
Yeah.
Because you think of getting rid, paring down. Then you can start making it more abstract. And I think we can relate because we just recently had this conversation about the number of projects we're taking on every week. And this podcast, the number of different options we have, audio, video, audio plus video, live stream. So
True.
If you were to apply this to that,
Now that's a nice
what
way
do
to
you
look
think
at
we
it.
get, man? Yeah. What would you think we could do?
I think we would probably settle with an audio podcast. But then there's more that we want to do with it, right? Not just that. We also want to explore the marketing aspect and all of that. Reach out to people on Instagram, and that's a visual medium.
Yeah.
So we need to find a balance.
Yes. So I think the other way of approaching this is minimalism seems to be initially all about saying no. Say no to extra responsibilities, say no to extra products.
So what's the origin, do you think? Is it like the minimalism, the idea of minimalism? Is it like religious, like get away from all your earthly, worldly possessions and something like that? And it's evolved from that into a civilian kind of form?
I don't know if it evolved from that, but you can definitely see this motif of minimalism and having less and having fewer possessions.
Across many religions.
Yes. But to come back to my point, I think this two ways of living life.
Yes.
Say yes to everything to embrace opportunity, and say no to everything to reduce stress. It occurs to me that we start off by saying no to everything in this journey of minimalism. Cut down the number of things we have. But as you journey through it, you realize, again, it's not about saying no. It's about strategically saying no and yes, depending on your principles.
And so this is where I went into the thought that it might be an ascetic kind of thought process. Say no.
Yes.
But then here we are doing it a little more strategically.
Yes, we're writing the imbalance. And I think, for example, with work, both with work, with furniture, it's actually a form of self-expression. Because when you have taken time to choose the possessions you have, the tasks you accomplish during the day, you've really pared it down to what you think is ideal. So, for example, Tim Ferriss's, or was it wasn't Tim Ferriss? It was Getting Things Done. I'll come back to him. Anyway, so he talks about having your MITs, the most important tasks, three most important tasks every day to help you focus. So the clothes you choose, the furniture you have, the friends you hang out with, your to-do list. If you put in time to choose these things consciously, it's actually a reflection of who you are and your priorities. So it's really weird that it is, in a way, a form of self-expression.
I can see that.
Yeah. And so applying this to life is where the fun begins. Because now you are forced to think about what you want and what you don't want.
So tell me a little bit about what you have, the choices that you have made consciously like this, to not just in your physical possessions, but as you're saying now, how have you applied it to your life?
Right. For me, it was actually quite simple. Have I used or done this thing in the last year?
Yeah.
If not, it goes. But a simple example would be, I used to have a PC and a laptop and a printer, right? And I remember thinking it was cool because of, a balance of, you have options.
Yeah.
But then I stopped myself and asked, how many times have I used these options? So I have this printer next to me, that I have to keep filling with ink, toner, and getting it serviced. And I've used it maybe twice in the last year. Just before going to meet a client, I needed a printout. And nowadays, we don't even take printouts when we go to meet clients. So I asked myself, okay, if you were in an office and this was something you did all the time, then sure, it makes sense to have the printer. But with me, there's a printing shop just down the road. I can go there if I wanted, but just 2 times a year.
Right.
So these are very intensely personal choices. So for me to say, Susheel, you need to get rid of your laptop otherwise, or your printer, otherwise you are living a wasteful life, that would be silly. So this, even with work, the number of projects I take on, I could say yes to 10 different projects and somehow manage to juggle them. But then I don't give my best to any one of those projects. So this is common sense. Many people do this without understanding minimalism, but I think it's important to see the connection, to see how it's more than just things.
You have also applied this to other aspects of your life, not just work and possessions. I think you've also looked at it in terms of the activities that you spend time on, right? Where you spend time.
Yes. Yeah, activities. And this actually links to something you call environment design. So the idea is
design
that
is for yourself.
Habit formation. Yes,
okay.
For habit formation.
Okay.
So what you have in your environment, and this I picked up from James Clear in his book Atomic Habits, where he explores this concept. Although habits have been explored even by Leo Babauta. The idea is that what you see, what is easy to access, is what you do.
Right.
And so if you, for example, when you come home from work, you want to read. If the first thing you do when you come in is to see your large screen TV and a couch, you're going to plonk yourself down onto the couch and watch that TV.
Sure.
So one solution, doesn't have to be yours, would be to move the TV into another room and put the couch in that room and bring out a reading chair if you're fancy, or just a regular chair if you're not. And put your bookshelf as soon as you come in, visible as soon as you come in. If you want to jog, if you want to start exercising, when you get up in the morning, the first thing you see next to your bed should be your shoes and your tracksuit or whatever you're going to be wearing. So James Clear talks about cutting down the barriers between you and your trigger for a good habit, and adding more barriers between you and your trigger for a bad habit you want to get rid of.
Makes sense.
So once I started looking at environment design and the importance of habit formation, minimalism tied in. Because the more things you have in your room, the more distracted you're going to get.
Right.
The fewer things you have, the more you'll focus on what you have. So when I started cutting down things and then choosing what I wanted in my room, I was unwittingly at the time designing my environment, which then in turn affected my habits. And this whole importance of habits versus goals is something we could, in fact, cover in a different podcast.
Sure.
But before we wind up for today, I thought I should share a related concept of the difference between minimalism and frugalism.
That's interesting.
I'm not sure.
So
yes.
All right. So I probably see where you're going with this, but okay, go ahead. What's the difference?
My mother saves every single thing she can find.
Okay.
She's a hoarder. And if you ask her why, it is because she always finds another use for whatever she saves. So if there's a shoebox, she won't throw it away. It'll be in her room. And then if there is a broken lamp, she'll keep it and repurpose it into a gift. And I keep making fun of her saying, what's the point in keeping all these things? Like if you haven't used it in a year, when are you going to use it? And then 10 years from now, she'd say, see, because I kept this, I have something. I was like, if you hadn't kept this, something else would have been there for you to use. But that's what, it struck a chord in me because I realized that for her, a cluttered room doesn't matter. Wasting money and resources when you don't need to is a problem.
Right.
And then I realized that when I Googled minimalist furniture or interiors, you see it's a very specific art style. So sort of Japanese, there's a term for that. It's a mix between Japanese and some other style. Anyway, and so you see really fancy, elegant furniture that's going to cost a bomb, arranged in a very elegant sort of way. There is a look that comes with minimalism. A lot of chrome, shiny chrome. All of this costs money.
Right.
And that's when I realized the asceticism you talked about is not how minimalism is usually embraced now.
Right.
Now it's not about, we've separated spending less and having less. So the minimalist will be a high-powered banker who's spent millions or crores, depending on which country you're in,
right,
to set up this perfect house where with just a few things, but then the bed rises up above the floor and the television comes out of its cabinet. Really cool stuff, but costs a lot.
Right.
And so it's interesting to sort of see this differentiation. I'm sure you've also come across it in the tiny house movement. Have you come across this movement before? Yeah.
There's some beautiful houses there.
Yes.
All pared down to very minimal stuff. Yeah.
Very minimal stuff, and you see very frugal stuff as well as very
posh. Very comfortable houses, even though minimal. Yeah.
Their tabletops, or rather the kitchen tabletops, will be made of really expensive material because there's just very little of it. So
yes.
I forgot. I wanted to ask you minimalism and budgeting. What are your thoughts on that? Because you've done a bit of research on investing and money management, right? Can you see an application?
Definitely. Minimalism in terms of, again, bringing down your monthly expenses just to what you need. Like paring away the stuff, the unnecessary stuff, taking it away. So that, subscriptions that we add on that we don't really realize are being, paid for automatically.
Right.
I see that minimalism would definitely help in that and help to cut out unnecessary expenditure. Just keep it to the basic needs and not really... actually, it's very interesting that way to stay mindful of your expenses. If you have minimalism as something that's in the core of your thinking, then you're automatically going to be mindful of your expenses. And definitely, I see it being very useful as a way to manage money.
Right. Yeah. I think we keep coming back to this. Minimalism is about attention. Yeah. What you choose to direct attention to. And I think that's one takeaway. So how do you think we can challenge our listeners if they have been moved to experiment with minimalism? How could they engage?
I would say, this is something you brought up earlier. Everybody knows about the 80-20 principle. So what's the 20%?
Wait, let's just explain in case someone hasn't heard about it.
Why didn't you do that?
Wilfredo Pareto, I don't know how to pronounce it, was an Italian economist. And he was looking at, okay, don't quote me on this, but basically he's looking at the land owners, how rich they were versus the amount of land they own. And he found out that something like 20% of the landowners own 80% of the land. And he then started realizing that this 20-80 or 80-20 principle was everywhere. So the question I guess we're asking, incidentally, now that Wilfredo's ratio has been skewed even further. Now it's something like 5% of the richest people own 95%, or maybe even 1% own 99%. But for convenience, Susheel, 80. So what 20% of effort can get us 80% of the
benefit? Yeah.
Of the benefit.
That is helping you to focus better, by focusing on that 20%. What 20% of your life is going to help you the most? I think you're the right person to expand on that. Because what kind of things should people look at?
So I think depends on how much time you want to invest in this.
Yeah.
If you just want to play around with it, just declutter your desk. Just look at what's on your desk, how much of it do you need, how much of it do you not need. Even if you don't necessarily feel
do they have to really think about anything? Like, should they look at keeping things on their desk, specific things on their desk?
Absolutely.
From your experience?
So take a look at your desk and see how much of the stuff on it you've used recently. Like, for example, if there's a stapler on your desk, highly unlikely nowadays, but just say if there's a stapler on your desk, does it need to be on your desk, or does it need to be in your drawer, or do you need a stapler?
I have a punch on my desk.
Play with these ideas. Oh, yeah. So you ask yourself the question about
I've not punched paper for months, maybe years, but it's on my desk. It's a nice green one, so I like it.
Yeah. So an easy way of you can ease into this by just...
that would be better hidden away and would help me focus on what's over there.
What's left. Yeah,
absolutely.
So you could do that with your desk. You could do it with your room. Just tidy up your room and just playfully ask, what of these things, what do I need? Now, I'm not saying get rid of furniture, as we've reiterated throughout this whole podcast. Don't get rid of everything. Just ask yourself, what are you using, or what is there because you find it beautiful? Not what's there because it was just there when I came.
I think you had that term. What's that? Joy spark? Spark joy? Something like that?
What is spark joy, joy spark, whatever you
want.
One of the two. But Marie Kondo,
I think that's something that would really help people focus, right?
So this is the first step. If you want to go a little deeper, I really suggest you read Marie Kondo's book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And it's available quite easily. You can get the audiobook as well.
We'll have a link in the show notes.
Absolutely. She'll take you through the whole process very methodically. And it's actually quite relaxing. I used to listen to it to go to sleep. Just a description, the audiobook. Just a description of putting things away and folding. For example, folding clothes. She teaches you the Japanese way of folding clothes so that they take up as little space as possible. But for example, your t-shirts are all lined up vertically so that they're about this tall and this wide, all lined up like this. So when you're looking down at it, you can see all the colors.
Slide it out.
You just lift them up or slide it out, whichever way. It can be up or out.
Wow. I've got to learn
So these little hacks. Yes. And the way she folds it, it is a one twist. It's like magic. She literally I can do it now. She's taught me. You hold it here, you twist, and it's folded. You can see this on YouTube.
I think I've seen that.
Yeah. So Marie Kondo's...
We'll have an insert.
Yes. So Marie Kondo's book is amazing. And then to hear two pros, there is the Minimalist blog. You just look for the Minimalist. These two guys who are very well off, very rich, decided to become minimalists and have done a great job of talking about minimalism and exploring it. They have a podcast. They have their own website. I think they have a documentary. We can link to that as well.
So, Rohan, would you have a selection of your favorite minimalist resources for our watchers and listeners in the show notes, please?
Yes, can do. I will list all these things.
That would help so much.
And if you want to have a nice long conversation about minimalism and your experiences, please do engage with us in the comments below. And where else, Susheel? Where else can they share that?
We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. I'm Susheel_C and Susheel02. Susheel_C on Twitter, and Susheel02 on Instagram. Rohan is on Instagram. He's the guy to listen to for minimalism. He's been doing it for something like 12 to 15 years. What's your Instagram, Rohan?
Rohan tries thinking. I decided that I realized that I think just 2 or 3 times a year. And so I've decided to try thinking more, and Instagram is my outlet. So yeah, you can find me there. Rohan Tries Thinking on Instagram.
Thank you so much for joining us, for listening, and for those of you on YouTube, for watching us. Hopefully, we've contributed something to you. And if you found it interesting, join us more often, subscribe, follow us on Instagram. We have a Sliding Doors podcast on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook. Join us on any one of those platforms, and we will see you soon.